Hey y'all, Michelle Raza here with Finding Yourself SATX Life Coaching, helping you find your best self since 2017. Today we're going to talk about how to free yourself from the chains of codependency. We're going to finish Melody Beattie's book, Codependent No More, that we've been covering for quite a while here, wrapping up and talking about the new additions to the 2022 edition. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Before we go ahead and get started, let me just first excuse my dogs. It is freezing here in San Antonio, Texas, literally freezing, which doesn't happen that often, although it feels like in the past few years it's been happening every year. So they're here in the room with me. So if you hear moaning and groaning, it's not audience reaction. That's actually my two pups. They're big pups. And then also wanted to raffle off the digital life coaching package to today's winner. So Amber Dawson, if you're watching, please contact me. You can see my contact information at my website, www.findingyourselfsatx.com. And y'all, if you're watching, please do like and subscribe, and don't forget to enter into this video's raffle. Thanks. Okay, so how do we free ourselves from the chains of codependency? What has this book been all about? What are we trying to do here? In page 33 of the book, Melody says, she defines codependency for us. She says, a codependent person is one who has let another person's behavior affect them and who is obsessed with controlling that other person's behavior. So a codependent person, in the traditional definition, is someone who is married or partnered to an alcoholic or somebody who otherwise abuses substances. Give me 1 second. And my previous cam setup was easier, but this one is wiggly, so it gets kind of annoying. The traditional definition is someone who is married or partnered with an alcoholic or another person who abuses substances, any other substances. It can also be, in some cases, people in helping professions actually become codependents. And if you've been watching my channel since the beginning, learning about Dr. Gibson's definition of emotionally immature parents, emotionally immature people, the codependent is typically the internalizer. In Gibson's language, there's the externalizer who becomes the dependent, or who can become the dependent, and then the internalizer who would become the codependent. And so then we talked about, okay, so now we know, right? If you're watching this, most likely you are a codependent, or you suspect that you are. So what do we do about this thing? Through the video series, we talked about different coping skills. One of the most popular videos on this playlist is the one on detachment. What the heck is detachment? In some religions, detachment is one of the major tenets, and it's something that you strive for and struggle to achieve your entire life. But Melody has one chapter on it in her book, and so we talked about it in one chapter. Go ahead and watch that video on detachment. It really will help you. Or pick up Melody's book. We talked about not allowing yourself to be victimized, removing the victim. She talks about the triangle, right? The persecutor, the victim, the rescuer. We don't want to be that. We don't want to be the victim. And the codependent typically will rescue and then feel upset at the person that they rescued and then become victimized. So we really just want to avoid that by removing the victim. Being independent, that there's entire chapters on this as well, but I would advocate most importantly being financially independent. If you're financially independent, then you're able to leave a situation that is not good for you. When you're financially dependent on someone, that makes that so much harder. So whether the situation is one of substance abuse in your partner or loved one, or the situation could be a domestic violence situation, if you're financially dependent on someone else, it's going to make it much harder for you to make choices that are healthy for you. So achieving your financial independence is something that you really want to strive for in order to get away from a codependent relationship or a relationship of domestic violence. And actually, financial independence is one of the things that we talk about and we teach. The stuff I cover on YouTube is not the same stuff that I cover in coaching. And achieving financial independence is one of the topics in the life balance questionnaire. So if you want to pick that one up, they're all on 50% discount for the month of December. Then we talked about caring for yourself. So you are a codependent. You've discovered that you're a codependent. What do you do now? You detach. You don't allow yourself to be victimized. You become independent, especially financially independent, and you need to care for yourself. Everyone talks about self-care. It's a buzzword. The next book that I'm going to cover is entirely on self-care. But what does it mean to take care of yourself? Focusing on the dependent, their problems, their issues, their alcoholism, their drug use, and forgetting to take care of yourself is often something that codependents do. So caring for yourself or self-care means something as simple as not forgetting to brush your own teeth or your own hair, taking showers, picking up after yourself and your loved ones, like your actual dependents, like your children, in the house, not letting the house get too messy. Stuff that oftentimes being a codependent is paired with being depressed. And that's one of the signs, right? Sleeping too much, letting things go. So take that, kind of nip it in the bud and stay ahead of it by taking care of yourself. Finding time for something as little as this, watching a 20-minute video, soaking in the hot tub. For me, my escape is yoga, actually. And I have a yoga dome that I use, which is kind of like a sauna, a portable sauna. So finding that time for self-care, taking a walk, doing hobbies that you like, hanging out with friends, going out to lunch. Codependents are notorious for saying no to everything except fun. That's something that Melody says in her book. Then she has a chapter on accepting yourself, accepting your dependent for how he or she is, and life as it is, not how you'd like it to be. So accepting means taking off those rose-colored glasses, seeing things for what they really are, and then making informed choices about it. If you accept yourself, there's ugly in yourself. If you're a codependent, there's some ugly that you're hiding. By constantly focusing on somebody else's problems, not your own, you're not paying attention to who you actually are. You need to see yourself, and you need to accept yourself. And if you don't like who you are, you need to change yourself. But you can't change other people. You can only change yourself. So accepting yourself, accepting your dependent. Who are they really? Not loving them for their potential, but loving them for who they actually are, flaws and all. Can you accept them or can you not? And if you cannot accept them, maybe it's time to let go. But you have to see them for who they actually are. See yourself for who you are and see them for who they really are. And then seeing life as it is, not as you'd like it to be. There's a lot of codependents who pretend that everything is peachy and their child or their loved one may be off in their room, snorting cocaine or something, but they gab on the phone with their girlfriends that everything is fine and isn't the weather so great, and just not really seeing reality. So part of it, accepting, is seeing things for how they actually are and not pretending that anything is different. Then Melody talks about feeling your feelings. It's something that codependents are notorious for. That codependents are notorious for is pushing down your feelings, because there's always something more important than what's going on in your internal world. And so as a codependent, you're going to focus more on the other person, on their feelings, on their needs, on their craziness, if they crashed their car, if they got lost in the middle of the street, etc. You're not going to focus on your own feelings. One second. Man, these dogs are a bit much today. I'm hoping I bribe them with some treats. Maybe she'll stop barking. So feeling your feelings, especially the feeling of anger. The angry codependent is classic. It's who wouldn't be angry when it feels like every time your loved one is starting to get their life together, do things a little better, be more trustworthy, maybe stop lying to you, it all falls apart. It often falls apart. The codependent is pulling much more than their load. They don't have a 50-50 partner. So anger is part of it. And sometimes the dependent goes to AA, goes to Narcotics Anonymous, gets sober, does better. But as a codependent, you have to deal with your own anger that is maybe accumulated for years. And you need to address it. You need to feel your feelings before you can let them go. Otherwise, you're just pushing them down and they're still there. And then we talked about learning the art of communication. And so Melody has a chapter, again, detachment, communication, all of these things. You could go and study that for years and years and years. So we have about 3 or 4 videos on the art of communication. It's very important. Say what you mean what you say. Don't beat around the bush. Learn to express your needs and learn to establish boundaries. Those are the types of things that you would be working on with a therapist. You could also work with a coach to learn how to express your needs in a direct way, learn how to set boundaries. You can practice on your own. There's a ton of good stuff on YouTube. But at the end of the day, learning the art of communication is super important for your success, not only as a codependent, but just in life overall, learning how to say things and make yourself understood, right? And then the last video that we covered was working a 12-step program. So the 12 steps work. There's a reason why they moved from Alcoholics Anonymous to Al-Anon to CODA to Narcotics Anonymous and all of the other anonymous groups. They work. So look them up. Look up that video on it that we posted recently, or pick up Melody's book again. And then she closes out. She closes out with what she calls a few different chapters, but we're just going to go over high level some of it. It's called Pieces and Bits. So from page 227, she says, expecting healthy behavior from unhealthy people is futile. So expecting your dependent to act like a rational human being is just, it's not good practice. It's not good policy. It's not a good idea. And it's going to leave you feeling pretty angry most of the time. Then from page 229, sorry, I'm trying to do the book shuffle. Let me go to 229. She says this is about intimacy and fear of intimacy, or fear of being vulnerable. It's okay to feel afraid of intimacy, but it's also okay to allow ourselves to love and feel close to people. We can make good decisions about who to love and when to do that. It's okay for us to be who we are around people. Take the risk of doing that. We can trust ourselves. We can go through the awkwardness and uncertainty of initiating relationships. We can find people who are safe to trust. We can open up, become honest, and be who we are. We can even handle feeling hurt or rejected from time to time. We can love without losing ourselves or giving up our boundaries. We can love and think at the same time because we're learning to trust ourselves. We can learn when it's safe to trust other people. We can take off our running shoes. And then she goes into chapter 20, and this is called Soothing Yourself. And one of the updates that she's made for the 2022 edition of this book is becoming much more trauma aware in this chapter. So the book that we reference for trauma, and actually Melody references it too, is The Body Keeps the Score. So that's one that I highly recommend. I'm in the middle of reading it, not quite yet ready to cover it for this channel, but we'll definitely, it is one that is on the list. So from that chapter, I'll read you a couple of quotes, page 254. And I know I'm flipping a lot. I'm excited to finish this book, actually. I hope you're excited too. So Soothe Yourself talks about in the previous version, just kind of gives you tips on what to do to soothe yourself, to give yourself that self-care. For this 2022 edition of the book, she really focuses a lot on trauma. So here, page 254. Whether we're born into trauma or trauma and anxiety find us later in life, or both, or whether we're born or come into idyllic circumstances that later become shattered, the common denominator is a loss of control. We can't control a situation that's already hurt or threatening to harm us. We're overwhelmed and oftentimes stuck, feeling controlled by forces we cannot control and not knowing how to free ourselves. So this is the dilemma of the codependent. The reason why the codependent tries to control everything around them, including things that have nothing to do with them, is because they feel a lack of a sense of control. And so realizing that this can be due to complex PTSD, either from childhood or from dealing with your dependent, it's an important realization. And being gentle with yourself, you're trying to control things because you feel a lack of control elsewhere. You can't control your dependent and their use of alcohol or drugs, so you try to control other things very rigidly. Everything has to be perfect. You're a perfectionist. Maybe work is where you find your escape or your control. She's trying to make us aware of this. But again, trauma in and of itself is an entire book, and you could go to school and get a degree studying trauma. So Melody's book here is just a starting point. It's not necessarily the be-all end-all of understanding trauma. And then I got a couple more, 263. So here, one of the things that I wanted to focus on is that a codependent is someone who tries to help other people. And so how do you know? So if I'm helping other people, does that make me a codependent? And what is the differentiator between a codependent and someone who just performs acts of kindness or acts of service? And the difference is really that you want to help people. So here she says on page 263, be of service deliberately. Be of service when you choose to and when it feels right. Use your intuition. Follow your spirit. Acts of service, love, and kindness aren't codependent. They benefit others and help heal our souls. So just important to differentiate. We are not codependents when we choose to go volunteer or help someone. It is when we stop taking care of ourselves for the sake of helping other people, or we say yes when we really mean no. We say, yes, I'll help you when we feel resentment towards that person. It's a little deeper. It's not just the act of helping. It's when that helping starts hurting you that it crosses into the territory of codependency. And then here, page 266, have your own back. Don't turn on yourself. When you most need comfort, love, forgiveness, acceptance, or a listening ear, don't start judging or accusing yourself. Don't grow cold toward yourself. Don't call yourself names. Comfort yourself the way you would a young child. Comfort yourself the way you would a young child. Tenderly, lovingly, with kindness. Don't scold. That's not comforting. Nobody's perfect. And what's perfect anyway? So here, and we've talked about it in the past, but imagine your inner child. And that's very hard to imagine. Imagine a child in your life, whether that's your own child, a niece or a nephew, maybe if you volunteer, a child that you know from volunteering. Imagine that child going through what you're going through and talk to them. And that's how you should talk to yourself. You wouldn't call them stupid for loving someone that has issues. They may want to do things a little bit differently, but you wouldn't scold them the way you probably talk to yourself in the mirror. If you wouldn't talk to your best friend like that, if you wouldn't talk to your child like that, don't talk to yourself that way. I think that was the last quote. Let me see. Okay, yep, it was. So the first step in conquering your codependent habits is to acknowledge that this is what you have, this is who you are, that you are a codependent. So having watched from video 1 until now, or maybe this is the first video that you're watching, it's a big step. It's a big step to say, I have codependent patterns, or I am a codependent. And that's the first step to change. And within the 12 steps, that's the first step, right? Acknowledging what you're going through. So by watching this video, these videos, this playlist, picking up Melody's book, a combination of both, by taking that first step, you've started your path and your journey to your healing from codependency. So I want to congratulate you. It is very hard. This process is very hard, realizing that you're kind of getting lost in other people's problems. You're not facing your own feelings. You're not taking care of yourself. That can be very guilt-ridden. And so we want to find a path that avoids the shame, that talks to yourself lovingly and tenderly like you would a child, and that helps you get out of it. It's, in the words of Dr. Judd Brewer, what are you getting from this behavior? There was a story in Melody's book about someone chasing after her husband with a knife, and because he was a sex addict and he kept cheating on her, and she had to stop and say, I'm acting like a crazy woman. It may have been him that made me crazy. He made me crazy, but I am acting like a crazy woman. And she had to get out. She wasn't going to talk sense into him. He had to decide for himself a better path in life, and there's nothing that she could do to change it. So thanks for hanging out with me today. Next video, we will start covering Melody Beattie's, sorry, that's this that's this book here. We will start covering Dr. Lindsay Gibson's third book, Self-Care for Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. If you haven't been with me from the very beginning, and my silly videos with the worst angle, no makeup, no background, etc., I will cover what an EIP is, so what an emotionally immature person is, and give you a little bit of background before we start diving into what Dr. Gibson is saying are self-care tactics for adult children of emotionally immature parents. And it doesn't have to be that your parents were or are EIPs. It could also be your partners, your coworkers. If you're watching these videos, this is what Dr. Gibson says. If you're reading her book or watching these videos, you're interested in getting better. So if we're just talking about codependency, if you're watching this and you're a codependent, you've already taken the first step towards your recovery. So I look forward to talking to you guys next time. Thanks for liking and subscribing. I really enjoy your comments. Please keep them coming. And go to our store, buy something before the prices go back up. December 31st is the last day for our sale. And I look forward to giving away another one of our digital coaching packages in the next video. Take care, y'all. Merry Christmas if you celebrate. Happy Hanukkah. I believe that's going on as well right now. Happy New Year. I'll talk to you guys next year. Take care. Bye-bye.